live.
But it was really good, that one, EWTN live.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We had
Yes.
had a lot of fun filming for EWTN.
Yes.
They were very kind, very good people, and Father Pacwa is incredible.
Was it your first meeting with Father Pacwa?
No, I met Father Pacwa. We did a conference together about 15 years ago.
Oh, he's really good. He's really good.
Quite a while back. That was my first time being there at EWTN to film. I've done radio for them before, but that was the very first time that I've been there to film for them. And they're going to have me back to do the Eucharist, God willing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good, he's very orthodox, in his theology. I mean, it's difficult to find Jesuits of that character nowadays.
I totally agree with you. And Pacwa is fantastic. He's great. It's a great show. I hope people check it out. I hope people look at it. He's great. And we talked a little bit about, you probably heard, we brought up Ambrose. And tonight, tonight for some people and today for some people, depending where you are in the world, we're finally going to wrap up the Perpetual Virginity of Mary. And we move to the upcoming week. We finally begin with the Immaculate Conception. I think you all are going to love that. I'm going to have some scholars here. For a few of them, it'll be a lot of fun. For people wondering, why do we have so many classes for one dogma? We need to cover everything. Yeah. We've gone already from the beginning, the Bible. We've looked at reformers. We've looked at objections to the Bible text. We looked at church fathers, and we finally got to the era of Jerome, where Helvidius the Arian denied the Perpetual Virginity of Mary. We found out how really having a poor Christology will lead you to a poor Mariology, and vice versa. Really, they're connected together, and we find that also in Ambrose against Bishop BONOSUS. People don't really hear about it a lot.
No, they don't. No.
They really don't. But the case of Ambrose and BONOSUS comes about 10, maybe 11 years after Helvidius and Jerome, and it's very important because it led to the very first Marian council of the church. It's not an ecumenical council, but the Council of Capua is a Marian council. It's very important that we be aware of what happened here. Now,
do you remember in which? Oh, this one, 392. Oh, this one.
Yeah, 392. You can look it up. Now, what do we mean by council? That means where at times councils are ecumenical, meaning all the bishops from the Catholic region around the world. If they don't go, they'll send a legate. But bishops from all around the world will go in council, and they will make a decree according to what the Bible and the fathers have always taught. That is an ecumenical council. We have Council of Nicaea, Constantinople, Ephesus, and on and on.
This was even earlier than Ephesus.
Correct, which is a very good point, Albert. People recognize Ephesus for being the first Marian council. Well, Capua was before. People just don't know about it.
No, I've never heard about it.
They rarely hear about it because we don't have the acta from that council anymore. What do we mean by acta? We don't have certain minutes of the councils that have been preserved. What we do have are letters from St. Ambrose, who was Bishop of Milan, and letters from the Pope at the time, which indicate what happened here at the council. And it is a perfect way to wrap up the class we've been having on the Perpetual Virginity by traveling to Capua to the time of the great Ambrose, where he tussles with Bishop BONOSUS. And we're going to find out something maybe a lot of people don't know as well. Well, everybody's heard of Mary when she's there at the foot of the cross. Christ is dying, and he hands Mary over to the care of John. Why would Mary have not been handed over to the care of Joseph?
Oh, he was dead.
The majority of people would think that, right? Well, Ambrose didn't think he was dead. And the Council of Capua did not think he was dead either.
Oh, interesting.
Which is quite interesting. Now, could it have been that he was dead? It could have been. They're not making a definitive claim, but it's important that we realize that even if he would have been alive, people recognized Mary was a perpetual virgin, either which way, whether Joseph was alive or whether he was dead at the time.
No, doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't make any difference at all. But it's a very interesting observation, something new that you all are going to learn today. BONOSUS, whom the Council of Capua was concerned about, on that council, Ambrose of Milan left the imprint of his strong and prudent personality, as St. John Paul the Great put it, in his speech to the participants of the conference in the 24th of May, 1992. So we have the 71st epistle from Ambrose, which talks about BONOSUS. Well, we find out about Bishop BONOSUS. I agree with you, Andrea. In my opinion, I think he was dead. I do. I just think that, of course, I find it interesting that there were some fathers that thought that he could have still been alive. But in my opinion, had Joseph still been alive, I think we would have had a little bit of information about him. We don't have any information at all about him anymore after the temple period, the finding in the temple. It's a great observation. I agree with you, Andrea. I think it's fascinating.
And he was supposed to be much elder than Our Lady, at least traditionally.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. So BONOSUS, let me briefly stop sharing. I forgot to open up my Bible in Greek. Pull that up for y'all right now. Okay. Okay, there we go. Let me. Okay. An objection that was quite common for BONOSUS, and we're going to look at it again for people wondering. We're going to check it out again because the argument comes up yet again that Bishop BONOSUS, like Helvidius, heretically brought up the biblical passages to claim that Mary had lost her virginity. So he brings up the Gospels. He brings up the Gospel of Mark. And we'll go there in just a moment again. And for everybody looking on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. We hope you are edified by it. I will, before I wrap up, I'll take Q&A in case you have anything on your mind. So BONOSUS brings up the classic passages as usual. Ambrose replies by noting that the woman, and we're going to look at this right now, he notes that simply when Mary is called woman, because this was a bad argument, BONOSUS began to argue that, well, in certain areas, Mary is referred to as a virgin, and in other areas, Mary is referred to as mere woman, gune. But Ambrose pointed out that that doesn't mean anything. What does it matter if certain areas Mary is referred to as gune, and in certain areas Mary is referred to as woman? He's talking about Galatians 4, where it says right here, when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman. Right here, or made. Oh, there we go. I predicted what the footnote would say, because I know the Greek is made. I know it by memory, genomenon et gunaikos. It means made of a woman. That right there, that's even more evidence that Mary is the mother of God. Christ's human nature comes from Mary, made of a woman. So Bishop BONOSUS began to argue and claim that when Mary is referred to as woman, that it must mean that she didn't remain a virgin, which is a really bad argument. It's a dumb argument. It doesn't make any sense. And Ambrose was clear in pointing out that that kind of an argument just doesn't hold any water. Just doesn't make any sense at all. And he rightly so. He pointed it out. It didn't make any sense at all. Before they came together, here we go again. before they came together, the famous before they came together. By the way, for people wondering, we wrote an article, and I would definitely recommend you read it. As far as I am aware, I am unaware of any other article that has gone as in depth as we have. Check it out, where we examine, come together. Every place come together appears. Check out, you can read it in the blog. On my blog, it's only 12 pages long. It's not long at all. We go very, very in depth in the Greek, massively in depth. Check it out. I recommend you look at it. Why do I recommend you look at it? Because you're going to hear it a million times. Matthew 1:18, before they came together. That means before they had sex is the claim. But does come together, that Greek sunerchomai, does it mean anything sexual? Well, it would take a full show to cover that. Now, I've already done a full show. We did that on Reason and Theology. Go check it out. We did a whole, I don't know, I think we did like 2 hours on it, on that Greek word alone, where we go into that. But I recommend reading as well. We cover everything in that article. Check it out. Everything is covered here. And again, you're getting a major sneak peek into another edition of the book that'll come in the future. You can find it right here. We cover pretty much everything on that Greek word. But why is it important that I point it out to you? Because these very bad arguments are being used by the heretical individuals. BONOSUS, by the way, remember how I told you all that a key tenet of denying Mariological dogmas, doctrines, teachings, has with it the connection of denying Christology. Well, BONOSUS denied the divinity of Christ. So there you go. Helvidius was an Arian. He was probably maybe worse than BONOSUS. I don't know. We don't know a whole lot about BONOSUS, but he was bad as well. He was a heretic. So Ambrose replies to him by pointing out that, it doesn't always mean sexual. And in the context here, it doesn't mean that either.
Take a break.
We've covered that as well. That is something very, very important that we need to look at. We need to examine. We've looked at it before. So that's another objection. Now we get to the important part, the one where the argument is so bad, but it's probably the best they have. Brothers of the Lord. Now, Ambrose believed that those were the children. These brothers were the children of Joseph. Now, some fathers believe that. The church has never definitively defined whether you can believe, or whether you can believe that they were the children of Joseph or the cousins of Christ or whatever.
I think some Orthodox do believe that.
Sure, Orthodox, they're not dogmatic about it, but yeah, they do believe it. When I hear people tell me, look, Joseph was immaculately conceived, Joseph never had children, whatever. Look, if you want to believe that, go ahead. The church has never defined that. To believe that is your own prerogative. It's not been defined. There are a number of fathers that believed they were children from a previous marriage. Doesn't matter to us. What matters to us is whether or not we can prove Mary was a perpetual virgin or not, and we can prove it. So the Brothers of the Lord is one of the areas where you have Bishop BONOSUS going to, and he goes to Mark, not Mark Old. Mark chapter 6, as usual, as everybody knows. Now, we've heard already, and I'm going to tell you the way Protestants will respond to this objection. It's not a very good way. So we read in verse 3, is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us? So notice, this is important. This is the key right here. The Adelphos and the Adelphi, the brothers and the sisters. Christ will give the answer. He's answering them. A prophet is not without honor, except in his own country, among his own relatives, and in his own house. And they will reply by saying that it's pretty pitiful. Well, he's not talking about his brothers here. He's talking about other relatives. How on earth If those brothers and sisters, I'm telling you the way a Protestant will try and sneak out of it, because the Greek word there for relative is syngeneusin, and that shows you that those brothers and sisters could not have been children of Mary. They couldn't have been. That Greek word shows an opposition to the word that would indicate they were children from the womb of Mary. There's no way they were. No way. End of discussion. I've looked at every usage of that Greek word, which, by the way, people that tell me, well, you know what, it can be used sometimes for blood brother, they haven't done their research. They don't know how to do the research, because if they could, they would recognize they were wrong. Besides that point, they're now claiming, well, he wasn't talking about the brothers, talking about some other relatives. How? These brothers, these children, they were part of the household. They lived with him. And you'll hear that as well. So Catholic or Orthodox or evangelical that believe in the perpetual virginity of Mary, be aware. They're going to then say, well, if they weren't the actual brothers, pay attention. Well, if they weren't the actual brothers, how could they have been living with them? I mean, they're not going to be living with them. If they're not the actual brothers, why are they living with Mary? Why are they traveling with Mary? To that, I recommend you have our book. It will go much more in depth. The word for brother, Andrea, is adelphos, but it's not used in an exclusive manner for brother. It can be used for cousin as well. It can be used for cousin or far-off relative. But the power of that passage is, we notice one thing, Andrea, and that's a great question. It's a fantastic one. Adelphos or adelphe, for sister, can be used for relatives. It is not a strict usage for blood brother and sister from the same mother. But that Greek word, syngeneusin, used to identify the brothers and sisters, can never be used in that kind of a manner. There are no exceptions. So
go
ahead,
Father Pacqua did also mention that, to confirm what you're saying, that in Aramaic, they use, they don't have a word for cousin, so they use the same word as brother. So
Father Pack was incredible. He's just amazing. His knowledge of the language is unparalleled. He's incredible. But here is the one thing that I need to point out to you all. And if you all, we have it broken down much clearer in our book. But if you don't have our book, if you don't have the means of getting the book, email me and I'll show you. I'll break it down for you. Because Andrea brought up a great point. What is the Greek word for brother? But then they're going to argue and say, well, look, why were they traveling with the mother? Why did they live? Because look, they lived in the house, right? They had to, right? Because look, he replied, prophet is not without honor, except in his own country, among his relatives, in his own house. In his own house. Where on earth do you have cousins living in a household? There's a good point. It would be a good point for them, because they're at this point they're lost. They don't know what to do anymore. So they will then make that argument. But then in order to reply to them in a proper way, we need to show that the ancient Judaic model of household is right there. Cousins or relatives lived in the household with other people. It would have been normal for his cousins to have been, or whatever far-off relative, to have been living there in his house, because the book of Numbers tells you the very census of the households of Israel. Take a census of all the congregation of the children of Israel by their families, by their fathers' houses, according to the number of names, every male individually, and on and on. We don't have to go onward, because look, this was the familial model. Now people will wonder and say, how could the cousins have lived there? Let's look at the book of Numbers. I want to show you it in Greek because you rarely hear this from anyone. And I'm telling you, if you learn this, you will crush the argument. You will know the Gospel of Mark and you will crush the argument because Mark is hearkening to Numbers. The Greek is exact. We broke it down. We put it side by side. Look, take a census of all the congregation by their families, by their fathers' households, according to the number of names, and on and on and on. This familial model included relatives living in the household, not only strict brothers and sisters from the same mother. Look at that Greek word right here. And you don't need to know a lick of Greek. I'm going to show you this Greek word. You don't need to know a lick of Greek. Here it is. That Greek word we talked about a little while ago, it appears right here again. The Greek word for relative or for cousin. And I'm going to break it down for you, anglicize it for you. It comes from the Greek word syngenes or sungenes, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It appears right here in the book of Numbers. That is a familial model that shows you Mark knew. He knew what he was hearkening to, because the way the household is broken down there in the book of Numbers, it's broken down there in the Gospel of Mark as well. What does all of it mean? It all means that it would have been normal for relatives that were not children from the same mother to have been traveling with Christ. It would have been normal. So the argument that, well, he can't be referring to his brothers here, the brothers from here, the brothers and the sisters from here. He can't be calling him his relatives. That argument completely falls flat. It's a terrible argument. And if you know, go ahead, brother.
I think Bennett had brought it up last time and you rebutted him with this explanation.
I didn't. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no clue.
Yes.
It is a poor
when
argument.
You hammered him against he came with the idea, well, I'm not a scholar, I'm a pastor.
Yet he wanted it to be read that he's had over 20 debates and whatever. Okay. Whatever. But that is an important thing that we examine, because Ambrose, in replying to BONOSUS, who, by the way, we're going to eventually see was condemned, Ambrose was very clear in providing that refutation. Ambrose believed the children were from Joseph, from an earlier marriage, which he's perfectly permitted to believe, because, as we know, the prot of James, the proto-evangelium of James, the prot of James, it does seem to have been a quite early tradition. Some people believe that. But now we get to the letter on the case of BONOSUS from the archives of Ambrose's collection of letters. The case of BONOSUS had been brought before the Synod of Capua, and they had decided that it should be referred to the bishops of Macedonia under the presidency of Amicius, bishop of Thessalonica, as being his nearest neighbors. These bishops seem to have written a letter to consult Siricius. Siricius is the Pope. The Pope, who was the Pope at the time of the heresy of Helvidius, was Pope Damasus. But now we have Pope Siricius, and neither of them want to deal with this garbage. Excuse my language. They recognize stupid. Look, we're the Bishop of Rome. We don't have time for this stupidity. You're denying Mary remained a perpetual virgin. You're also denying all this other stuff. We don't believe it. We believe Mary was a perpetual virgin because the church has always taught it. And this is believed to be his reply. So let me be clear about one thing. When you go into the Patrologia, where the works of Ambrose are preserved, in the works of Ambrose, you find this letter preserved, but likely it was written 99.99999%, it was written by the Pope. Why is it amongst the letters of Ambrose? Because Ambrose probably told the Pope what to write. Ambrose was very well learned. There was nothing wrong with that. He knew the case very well. And the Pope recognized that Ambrose's arguments were erudite, they were intellectual, and they were biblical, and they were historical. That is what is the most likely scenario. BONOSUS was a heretic. He was called a forerunner of Nestorius. What do we know about Nestorius? He denied key doctrines of Christology. He denied the Eucharist. He denied transubstantiation. By the way, who was the first one to deny transubstantiation? Nestorius. That tells you everything you need to know about BONOSUS. That tells you everything. The pedigree of the denial of the perpetual virginity of Mary is a horror show in the early church, because the only ones that held to this horror show were massive heretics, arch heretics. You're never going to find a St. Ambrose, a St. Irenaeus, a St. Jerome, or any of them believing Mary had other children. You don't find it. It is a horror show. When somebody says, well, we have a foothold in early church history, and if they hearken to BONOSUS or Helvidius, I mean, good luck to them. I'd be embarrassed if my beliefs could only be found amongst arch heretics. Not even the Protestant reformers believed Mary ever lost her virginity and had other children. Not even they believed that. But the arch heretics did believe that, and they are the friends. I don't even want to say of Protestants, because I know many Protestants that believe Mary remained a perpetual virgin. So, a letter concerning the deciding of the case of BONOSUS, according to the decree of the Synod of Capua. And we're going to read it. It's not very long. After we read it, we're going to look at what Ambrose said about the perpetual virginity and Augustine. Why are we going to go to Augustine? And then we're going to finish it off with the Tome of Leo. You need to read the Tome. You need to know what the Tome of Leo is. Why are we going to read a little bit of Augustine? Because Augustine was taught and trained by Ambrose. He came into the faith in great part because of Ambrose. Ambrose clobbered him over and over in debating. Augustine had to convert. Now, at the end of the day, what occurs at the end of their lives, Augustine is the student, Ambrose is the teacher, but the student eventually surpasses the teacher. Augustine it would be tough to argue that Ambrose was better. Even though I love Ambrose, Augustine was far more intellectual, amazing, incredible, one of the greatest doctors and fathers of the church, one of the greatest church fathers of all time. But we'll read what he says as well. You've written to us a letter concerning Bishop BONOSUS, in which either from love of truth or from modesty, you inquire our opinion. Since it has been the judgment of the Council of Capua that those who are neighbors of BONOSUS and his accusers should be assigned as his judges, and especially the Macedonian bishops. Here's the important thing. Do you notice what's going on here? The Pope is the Bishop of Rome. He's in charge. So much for the argument that the Pope didn't have any papal primacy. They sent the argument to him, settled the matter. It has been the judgment, he already said. So in other words, it's good enough that the neighbors of BONOSUS are the ones that have been assigned as judges. But they wanted the Pope to judge on this. So he says the Macedonian bishops, who were the Bishop of Thessalonica, should judge of his acts and writings. We have to remark that the function of judging cannot appertain to ourselves. Otherwise, with the question of the synod at this day still open, we might have well decided concerning these things which are included in what you have written at length. Then it gets better. Having taken upon yourselves this judgment, it is now your part to form your decision on the whole question, to give no power of retreat or escape either to the accusers or the accused. For being chosen by the Synod to conduct the examination, you have taken upon you its functions. And it continues onward, noting how Ambrose, it's called Brother Ambrose, is the one who has been shocked at the kind of language being utilized. Shocked at the kind of language coming from BONOSUS. Assuredly, we cannot deny that he is justly blamed concerning the sons of Mary. So BONOSUS is wrong. And that your holiness deservedly repudiated the opinion that from the same virgin womb of which, according to the flesh, Christ was born, other offspring was produced. You catch that? The council's declaration is that this is to be repudiated. It is nonsensical. For the Lord Jesus would not have chosen to be born of a virgin if he had conceived she would be so wanting in continence as to suffer that birthplace of the Lord's body, that palace of the eternal King, to be polluted by human intercourse. To propound such an opinion as this, what is it but to fortify the unbelief of the Jews, who say that it was impossible he could be born of a virgin? By the way, before you had a Helvidius, before you had a Bishop BONOSUS, you had a heretic by the name of Celsus, who Origen wrote about, who denied the perpetual virginity of Mary. You had that heretic. So heresy runs rampant. And Celsus didn't only deny the perpetual virginity, he wasn't part of the church, but he said the Jews denied the very fact that she was a virgin. So that is what was denied. The prophecy of Isaiah 7 coming into fulfillment. That's what was denied by him. And then we arrive to the heretic Helvidius. And then to the heretic BONOSUS. Figures who the church wasted no time in condemning. Wasted no time in condemning their heresies. What else can be the meaning? And here's the important part of the text wherein the Lord says to his mother of John the Evangelist, "Woman, behold thy son," and again to John of Mary, "Behold thy mother." With what purpose was it that while the Lord was hanging upon the cross and atoning for the sins of the world, he declared also the integrity of his mother? So here's the interesting part. He believed, a few people believed Joseph was still alive. He would not have chosen to separate her from the company of her husband. But if that is not enough, the evangelist has added his testimony, saying that the disciple took her unto his own home. Did he then cause a divorce? Did he carry her off from her husband? So some people believe Joseph was still alive. How can he who reads this in the gospel stagger and waver to and fro as one who has been shipwrecked? And we finally get towards the ending of the declaration, the decree. This then is a testimony of the Son concerning his mother's chastity. This is the rich heritage of Mary's immaculate virginity. This is the consummation of the entire work. Now, you recognize that word immaculate here. I turn your attention to the fact that a number of fathers, merely because you see the word immaculate, doesn't mean they're talking about the Immaculate Conception. Did Ambrose believe in that? Of course he did. We'll eventually get to that later at another time. In fact, we're covering that in the next course on Mariology that we begin. But this is the rich heritage of Mary's immaculate virginity. Immaculate doesn't always mean Immaculate Conception. So even though the fathers believed it, I'm just letting you know that when you're dialoguing with an intellectual individual and you say, look at the word immaculate, the father must have meant she was immaculately conceived. No, immaculate also means without stain, and they at times would use that to talk about virginity. So context is an important way as to how immaculate is being used. So we've got that. We've gotten capo out of the way. It would be great if we had the acta. What is the acta? Again, the minutes, the more details as to what was dialogued about, discussed at the council would be fantastic if we had them. But we don't have them with us. We don't have them. They don't exist anymore. What we have with us is a letter from Pope Siricius and the language from the great Bishop Ambrose. And Ambrose was very clear. Imitate her, Mary, holy mothers, who in her only dearly beloved Son set forth so great an example of material virtue. For neither have you sweeter children than Christ, nor did the Virgin seek the consolation of being able to bear another son. That is why the great teacher Ambrose, his influence on Augustine was very clear. In being born of a virgin who chose to remain a virgin even before she knew who was to be born of her. Now, this is important language because Augustine and Ambrose recognized Mary had taken a vow. They recognized there was a vow of virginity having been taken. And remember, Ambrose makes a connection to the book of Judges. That's very important. I want to remind you, I know I've had people, by the way, I've gotten an overwhelming amount of emails, people wanting to know how many fathers made that connection. More than, it wasn't just Ambrose and Ephraim. There were more that noticed the connection between Judges 11 and Luke 1. That will be in a forthcoming edition on Mariology that we will put forth. We'll include those quotes. There's more. There, even in the Syriac liturgies that we found, that connection is made. That shows you the strength, the ancient pedigree of how the fathers recognize, and why wouldn't they? The language is very clear. The book of Judges and Jephthah's daughter. Very, very clear. The fathers made that connection. In being born of a virgin who chose to remain a virgin, she chose perpetually, she took a vow. Before she knew who was to be born of her, Christ wanted to approve virginity rather than to impose it. And he wanted virginity to be a free choice, even in that woman in whom he took upon himself in the form of a slave. Isn't that incredible? He didn't force her to remain a virgin. That was done by her own free will. Nothing was imposed upon Mary. That is why we point out that in Luke 11, when we read of it's more important and more blessed to hear the word and keep it, Mary was the very first one to hear the word in Luke 1. She heard that word and kept that word in her heart, vouchsafed that word. She was the one, and there's a play on words that occurs in Luke 11. Who was the first one that heard the Logos? And the Logos comes to Mary. The word comes to Mary, and Mary accepts that word. Now, we then move to the great Pope Leo, which, by the way, if anybody's aware of the Tome of Leo, maybe you're not aware of how important the Tome of Leo is when it comes to Mariology as well. We're going to briefly look at that. But before we get there, because that will be our final pit stop, and we wrap up what we've done on the Perpetual Virginity, you might be wondering how many. I think we had maybe like 7 classes on the Perpetual Virginity, or 6. I forget. We covered everything. And we're going to do the very same for the Immaculate Conception when we begin the Immaculate Conception. That will be even more massive. There's much, much more to cover there. There's a ton to cover. We're going to look at every claim made. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of claims against the Immaculate Conception that are made. We need to look at. We need to examine. And we will do that. We'll go through everything in order. We'll begin with Genesis 3 and the Proto-Evangelium, the very first gospel. very first good news, which talks about the coming of the Messiah and the mother of the Messiah, both of them being at complete enmity with Satan, with sin. Our Orthodox brothers and sisters erroneously believe that, well, Mary must have had original sin because Mary died. We're going to examine the Book of Wisdom, which tells you otherwise. Now, you may be wondering, what are you talking about? The Book of Wisdom? I'm just giving you a bit of a teaser. That'll be a lot of fun. I'm not aware of anybody having brought that up before, but we're going to examine that very, very in depth. Very in depth. But a little bit of a teaser there for you. Before we get to Pope Leo, because we will be getting there soon, and that, unfortunately, is our final pit stop on the perpetual virginity. But it's not all sadness. We're continuing Mariology. We're not even done yet. We're going to continue with the Immaculate Conception. Then after that, probably after maybe a month and a half or two, we go to Mary, Mother of God, and we probably go for a month or a month and a half on the Assumption, the Dormition and Assumption. So we've got a ton to cover, maybe 2.5, 3 more months of just Mariology. You all will learn everything possible. The strongest arguments, the weak arguments, and every objection that can be levied. By the way, a very good friend of mine, who's probably the top Assumption and Dormition scholar in the world, will most likely join us for one of those classes. He has examined the actual manuscripts. And let me tell you one thing. I'm only going to give you a tiny clue. I'm not going to give you more. There was a new document discovered on the Assumption of Mary, and it's been dated to the 100s. Can you believe that? I'm not going to tell you all anymore because I want you all to wait until we get to there. I don't want to get too far ahead.
That would be good to debunk the Protestants.
That would be a lot of fun.
The Assumption of Mary is something really which really puts how high in the esteem of God Our Lady is, so that put away their objections about Mary.
Amen, brother. Amen. Does anybody have
a question?
Go ahead, brother.
Question. Bishop BONOSUS, was he an Arian?
We don't really know. I tend to not think he was an Arian, but he denied the divinity of Christ. So whether he was an Arian or not, the most important thing is he was probably as bad because he denied that Christ was divine. Even after he died for a while, there was a cult of people that followed him that existed for a while before they vanished, and they all denied the divinity of Christ as well. They all denied it. Kevin says it's going to drive Matt Slick crazy. Matt Slick will not touch Mariology. I had a debate set up with him that he totally backed out of. I don't take him seriously at all anymore.
Is he a Protestant debater?
He's a Protestant debater, yeah. I don't waste my time anymore. So if people tell me they're going to debate and then they vanish and then they ignore me, I don't have time for that. If they want to debate, they can debate. If they don't want to debate, that's fine. It is what it is. So Pope Leo, we'll talk about how amazing Pope Leo is in a bit. Anybody that has studied the papacy, you've got to know who Pope Leo is. Pope Leo's tome was read at the Council of Chalcedon, or Chalcedon, depends how you want to pronounce that. I prefer Chalcedon. It was not the visible Son, but its invisible Creator who consecrated this day for us. When the Virgin Mother, fertile of womb and integral in her virginity, brought him forth. Now, what does it mean by fertile of womb? It means, what did the fathers say? They would call Mary womb as wide as heaven because of the prophecy in the book of Galatians that says that all the wombs were closed. By the way, that's another implication that Mary was immaculate in the book of Galatians. I bet you all didn't know that. You all will find out that Galatians talks about these wombs that have been shut, that none of them can give birth to the promised Messiah. And it talks about them being under the condemnation of sin, original sin. And Mary's womb was the only one that was wide enough, fertile enough. It doesn't mean literally wide enough. It means in a metaphorical manner. It was open. It was not under the condemnation of sin, and it was open to give birth. That is why the fathers would call her womb as wide as heaven, fertile of womb. Just a little bit of information that we will cover much, much, much more.
This is in Galatians. In Galatians, you said?
Yes, I will break that down next week. In fact, I do a whole class only on that. It is very, very essential. You will see what I'm talking about.
Do you have the chapter and verse?
Galatians 3 and 4, but we need to examine all of it. We'll examine all of it, and we'll look at the Greek as well. Fertile of womb and integral in her virginity, brought him forth, made visible for us, by whom, when he was invisible, she too was created, a virgin conceiving, a virgin bearing, a virgin pregnant, a virgin bringing forth, a virgin perpetual. Why do you wonder at this, oh man? But there's more. This is the tome of Leo, Sermon 22. His origin is different, but his human nature is the same. Human usage and custom were lacking, but by divine power, a virgin conceived, a virgin bore, and a virgin she remained. Sermon 22 is the tome of Leo. It is one of the most important documents in all of church history. One of the most important ones. Leo's tome was read at the Council of Chalcedon as a mark of orthodoxy. And then he would not speak so erroneously as to say that the word became flesh in such a way that Christ, born of the Virgin's womb, had the form of man, but had not the reality of his mother's body. Or is it possible that he thought our Lord Christ was not of our nature for this reason? That the angel who was sent to the Blessed Mary, ever virgin, yet another indication, says the Holy Ghost shall come upon you, and the power of the Most High shall overshadow you, and therefore that holy thing also that shall be born of you shall be called the Son of God. Before we get to Constantinople, where it is dogmatically decreed that Mary had remained, I believe it was the Second Council of Constantinople, I forget the year. Somebody can fact check me on that. I think it was 553 or 559. Somebody wants to check on that, where it was dogmatically decreed she remained a perpetual virgin. Even before that, we have got it defined in Leo's tome, which was read at Chalcedon and was a sign of orthodoxy. What does that mean? That means that the true faith was taught in a correct fashion at the Council of Chalcedon. Now, as we reach the end of the perpetual virginity of Mary, I give you a sneak peek into a lot that we have, a ton that we have that is indeed to come when it has to do with the Immaculate Conception. We have a lot to cover. We will cover the vision of Mary we get before Mary is even created in the Old Testament. Why her Mary's Magnificat is important, which is very important when it comes to the Immaculate Conception. The language used by Mary. How you can utilize Mary's being full of grace to connect that to the hymn that she is quoting. How Mary relates to Song of Psalms 6:9, the pure dove, which, by the way, is referred to in Luke 2 at the purification. We'll look at the purification of Mary. We'll examine the Greek word for purification, how it doesn't always mean purification for sin. We'll look at the Greek prokatharthisa, which my very good friend Father Kopitz, nobody's done a better study on that than him. We're going to look at that in the Father. There's so much when it comes to the Immaculate Conception. You all are going to be, you're going to be fed spiritually in an amazing way. And you'll fully realize how once we get to, oh, and by the way, there's many new translations in English that had not existed before from the fathers that we're going to unveil for you. You're going to finally, when we get to 1854, the bull Ineffabilis Deus by the Pope, you're going to finally realize the dogmatic decree, the definition of the Immaculate Conception is, as the Tome of Leo, a mark of orthodoxy. And we're going to recognize how even the Tome of Leo teaches that Mary never had original sin. We're going to examine what is original sin. We're going to look at everything. So, but that is a sneak peek. If you have anything on your mind, any questions as we reach the finish line, the perpetual virginity, remember, if you are interested in I people watching on YouTube, if you all want to join us here, well, you can either there on YouTube or here in the Zoom. Feel free to email me at william@patristicpillars.com and I will get you on the list. The Immaculate Conception, I don't know if I will air all of those on YouTube. Some of those will probably be done. But either which way, we have a lot of really fun stuff coming up. Does anybody have anything on their minds before we do finally wrap up the Perpetual Virginity of Mary? I'm looking on YouTube as well. If anybody does have anything on their mind, if you do have anything, and by the way, I am on tomorrow again. I will be on tomorrow. That I will probably put on YouTube. Tomorrow we'll be talking about transubstantiation, our brand new book on the Eucharist. We'll be doing a mega session on that tomorrow. I will be on again tomorrow. So I'll be sending a link out to that rather soon. I'll be talking about that. That'll be a lot of fun. Somebody wants to know, will I be going live with Alan? Yes, I will be reaching out to Alan very shortly. I will be. I don't know the time yet. I'll confirm with Alan Rule, and I will send an email out. Y'all can check that show out. When I go live, we're going to be talking about the Immaculate Conception. That'll be a lot of fun, by the way. Check that out because you'll get a major sneak peek, a major one into the class that we're going to have. Of course, there's no way I can cover everything with Alan. It would be about 15 hours or longer, and Alan would fall asleep before we get done. I would too. So you're going to get a major sneak peek. Every objection you can think of to the Immaculate Conception, we will cover it here. And that I really look forward to. That might be one of my, I mean, I love every aspect of Mariology, but if somebody asked me which is your favorite, I'd probably have to go the Immaculate Conception. There's so much to cover. It was so fun. I've had so much fun debating and talking about it.
The dogma, so to speak, the teaching of the perpetual virginity was less of a, let's say, disputed than the Immaculate Conception, I would think. I mean, this was in the early church, as you've said, it was widely held, the perpetual virginity.
Yeah, you were asking. Yeah, of course. In the early church, it was held. It was. We're going to examine very, very early fathers, ante-Nicene fathers. The Proto-Evangelium of James, the Prot of James teaches it, talks about Mary being the fruit of original justice. We're going to examine what does that mean. Original justice means lacking original sin, not having any original sin. We're going to look at that in the Greek. That'll be a lot of fun. I've got the Proto-Evangelium. Maybe I've got it open here. Do I have it?
I have one question though.
Sure, brother. Go ahead.
Do you think the apostles would have taught about Mary's virginity or Immaculate Conception while she was still alive?
I think I do think so. Yeah, I think it's very possible they would have.
Okay.
I think they would have definitely believed it. I think Paul clearly believed it.
The apostles would know that she shouldn't have any other children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, here we go. See if I can pull it. Oh, here we go. I got it right here. There we go, in the Greek. So we will look at it tomorrow. I just wanted to make sure that it's very hard to find in the Greek online, the Proto-Evangelium of James, but I've got it here. So we will, not tomorrow, I'm sorry, next week. We will be examining that when we begin the Immaculate Conception. We're going to examine, because the Greek is very important to look at the early fathers and the Greek they use to show the kind of language that they're utilizing. When it calls Mary a fruit of original justice, it's referring to the fact that she was created without original sin. That's very important. We need to realize that when utilizing language, when talking about the Immaculate Conception, here's another interesting thing. Do all of the fathers talk about her actual conception? No, of course not. No. But at the heart of the Immaculate Conception, what is the Pope talking about? The Pope is talking about how was Mary created? How? And she was created completely sinless, without any stain of sin, without any original sin. That is how she was created. But fret not, we're going to look at fathers that maybe you've never heard of, that talk of the actual conception. Kevin wants to know, did I mention in the video one of them that Paul mentions Mary in Galatians 4. Galatians 4:4, Mary is a woman. Genomenon ektou nikos, made of a woman. But he also gives the clear allusion to Mary being not under the condemnation of sin. We will look at that as well next week. We'll look at that in depth. Might do a whole class just on Galatians. That's very, very important. And the way the fathers interpreted Galatians. Somebody wants to know, when will the church canonize Bishop Fulton Sheen? I hope soon. I hope very soon. I really do. God willing, it'll be sooner than later. Great man. Yeah, Kevin, that'll be a very important, very interesting perspective. We'll look at that in the book of Galatians, and we're going to examine the typological references in Mary's hymn, in Mary's Magnificat, which clearly indicate that she's referring to her conception. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because you all are going to love it. You all are going to have a blast. And if you all, people that are watching on YouTube, if you're not Catholic, you'll learn a lot. You'll learn a ton about what the early fathers taught. And I really, really look forward to you all attending that. Does anybody else have anything else on their mind before we wrap up? Before we finally close, by the way, whereas we may be closing the door in the perpetual virginity here, I'm debating it again next month. So you all have a chance to watch that to continue it again. Have you found the debater? Yeah, Tony. I didn't find him. They found me. Tony Costa reached out to me. He's a well-known debater. He's a Protestant debater. I'll be debating him pretty soon. I'll once the artwork and whatever all that stuff is done, I'll send out that announcement. Is he to what Christian denomination he belongs? That's if he's a non-denomination. Calvinist. He's good. He's a Calvinist. Yeah. He's a good debater. Incidentally, today I heard Dr. Ender saying, which underlines what you've been saying, that the reformers, the first reformers, none were against the dogmas of Our Lady. And he said, he brought the example of Calvin. He said he was very anti-Catholic, but he upheld for example, there was a question about the perpetual virginity of Mary, He believed in it wholeheartedly. He defended it very much, he said. Yeah, no doubt. And in fact, I just pulled it up right here where this is Francis Turretin, a major anti-Catholic reformer. In his work, which is called The Institutes, he clearly affirms that Mary remained a perpetual virgin. It's remarkable how these... I'm putting it right here for people to look at. New Protestants, it's all... And I'm highlighting it for people. You can look at it right here on the screen. Thus, it is probable that the womb in which our Savior received the auspices of life when he entered the world, as from a temple, was so consecrated and holy, sanctified by so great a guest that she always remained untouched by man nor did Joseph ever cohabit with her. This, by the way, is Francis Turretin, a major anti-Catholic and a Protestant reformer. He's defending the belief that Mary remained a perpetual virgin. Protestants of today, what are you doing?
I don't know. It's really, it's also logical. I mean, that she would remain perpetual virgin, just in honor of her son, who was God. I mean,
yep.
It hasn't to be rocket science, even just reasoning it out, something quite.
I'm totally with you, brother. I just, the funny thing is, the arguments that Catholics use today to defend her were used by the Protestants as well. The Protestant reformers. What has happened to Protestantism? I'll tell you, it's a nightmare. It's a de-evolution, if you will. I mean, if anything, it wasn't a reformation, it was a deformation.
Yes.
They've moved further and further as centuries go by, further away from the Bible, which is very worrisome.
Even the meaning of born again changed.
It changed as well. It had always believed, it was always referring to baptism. That's changed as well. It really is just an unfortunate thing. But yeah, everybody, I will be dropping information on when I will be appearing for Alan very soon. I need to get in touch with him once I end here. And I will be again live tomorrow. We'll be doing, and I'll send the link out for that, for transubstantiation. As we wrap this up, we will have the artwork and the announcement on the Immaculate Conception courses coming as early as next week. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Everybody, I'm glad you've been around from the beginning of the Perpetual Virginity all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you all when we begin the Immaculate Conception. By the way, when we begin the Immaculate Conception, let me give you a little bit of a teaser. We're going to look, and we're going to probably do a whole class, maybe two to 3 hours on Genesis 3 alone, and all of the fathers, which is nearly impossible to find. We're going to examine probably 40 fathers and how they interpreted Genesis 3, how they viewed the Messiah and Mary there as well, including a ton of stuff that doesn't even exist in English. So you're not going to want to miss that as well. We're going to look at a lot of stuff. Everybody, you all have a fantastic day. I'm glad we finally got the Perpetual Virginity done, and then we have a lot more in Mariology to come. Everybody, God bless you and have a great day.